Hello and welcome to another episode of the Health Notebook. Today we have Dr. Ramanjam in the studio. She's a pediatrician and we'll be discussing early childhood development. Dr. Ramanjam, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Can you maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a pediatrician, as you said, so I'm a doctor who has specialized in pediatrics. So that's after medical school, 4 years of specializing to become a pediatrician. And then I further specialized in, as you said, neurodevelopment, which is a branch of neurology, or it's termed developmental neurology in some parts of the world, or child development.
Okay. Now, in terms of your experience, can you just maybe explain to the viewers where you're working at the moment?
Yes. So I work in the state sector and academic sector. So I work in a government hospital, in 2 government hospitals, as well as at in a teaching program for undergraduate and postgraduate students. So teaching and lecturing, as well as working as a clinician, seeing patients.
As my understanding is that you're also a little bit involved in research and also in terms of early childhood development. I know when I was a medical undergraduate, early childhood development was still developing at that particular stage. And can you maybe just give the viewers a concept of what early childhood development is and what is maybe the latest research at the moment? Just some background so that they can understand the concept.
Sure. I mean, I think anybody that's in the field now knows that early childhood development is a buzzword, it seems, in lots of different spheres, whether it's the politicians talking about it in their manifestos, whether it's antenatal classes that prospective parents go to. But there's a lot globally now about child development and the fact that early childhood development, meaning in the first 5 years of a child's life, that is so important in terms of outcomes later on. So it's not like previously thought that a child goes to school to learn, but that right from the outset, perhaps even from conception or falling pregnant, one needs to think about what sort of environment you're going to bring up your child in and what you can do to maximize your child's learning and developmental potential.
Okay, so early childhood development, you've mentioned there's various factors that influence the child's ability to grow and learn, and you've highlighted the point that it's defined up until the age of 5 years. So can you just give the viewers some idea of how does a child learn?
Sure. So, I mean, a child learns through the experiences and exposure and environment that he or she is found to be in. So it starts off with your genetic makeup, so where you come from, what you're made up of, what sort of environment you growing and developing in right from the time you're in your mother's womb. So what kind of pregnancy, what kind of nutrition, what kind of food she ate, whether she was happy, stress-free during her pregnancy, whether you were exposed to any stress factors, like was the home chaotic, or have you been exposed to trauma or violence. And all of these things will affect what kind of an individual you become, how you bond, how you attach, and what kind of a personality you develop into, as well as what intellectual or how far you're able to realize your true potential from a learning perspective.
So we've spoken about the external factors, but what about the individual factors that play a role in early childhood development? So can you maybe just highlight some of those factors?
So individual for the child?
Individual for the child, yeah.
So as I've said, the home that individual child belongs to, the family makeup, how many children there are, what sort of food the child eats right from the beginning, what sort of routine the child finds themselves in, what sort of stimulation the child is given, how much of love, how much of interaction, conversation, and the environment that the child is exposed to, together with what their genetic makeup is.
Okay, so can you maybe just inform the viewers what are some of the diagnosable childhood development disorders, or some of those developmental stumbling blocks that you can maybe become aware of at an early stage, and just some idea on how is it classified as well?
So I mean, I think before one goes as far as diagnosing problems, I think people need to understand what normal is.
Okay.
And I think that
That would be a great idea. So if you could just explain to the viewers
So
what
I think
normal
that whether it's healthcare workers, whether it's the clinic sister that you're taking your child to be immunized at, whether it's the preschool teacher or the creche teacher or whoever your caregiver is, needs to be fully on board with what is considered to be a normal, healthy, well-adjusted child, as opposed to a child that might be struggling or might be delayed or might have other concerning behavioral features. So I think normality is something that a parent or any prospective parent needs to understand is a wide spectrum. So if you have more than one child, when a child does what might vary from one child to the other, but that there are defined milestones that every child needs to meet from a motor perspective, meaning from when they start moving their muscles and when they start lifting up their heads, when they're able to sit alone, when they're able to crawl, when they're able to walk. And most people are familiar with that. Everybody knows that by the first year they want their little baby to start walking. But it's more than just your physical development. It's also your emotional development. When are you supposed to smile? So a baby that's not smiling by 2 months.
Or when you're supposed to say your first words.
When you're supposed to. So carrying on with the smiling is your social development and your cognitive or your higher mental development. So you smile, you coo, you babble. You don't just start suddenly talking at 1 year. You don't just say mama, dada at 9 months or 10 months. You start to interact verbally with your family by making sounds, by cooing, by laughing, by interacting, by playing peekaboo, by interacting with strangers differently to your loved ones or your familiar contacts. And all of that is communication ability. So a baby, for instance, that is quiet, is not making any sounds at 6 months, is something that's concerning.
Okay. So in terms, I know you've mentioned quite a bit now, but if you could just summarize for the viewers, what are the normal milestones during which months as well? So I know you've mentioned different aspects of development, but just give the viewers an idea of what's the expected milestones or what is normal up until the age of 5.
Sure. So that could take a long time to run through, obviously. I think when one thinks about development, like I said, parents need to understand it's not just physical development that they need to focus on. They're dealing with a little person, with a little human being. So that little human being, right from the minute that he or she steps into the world, has got a personality and needs to show that personality and interact. So to talk about the motor development, things happen in a sequential way. So you learn to develop strength and tone from your muscles all the way until eventually you're walking and running unaided. So in order to do that, you need to develop control of your head, first of all. So in a newborn baby, up until the age of a year or year and a half, the heaviest part of their body is their heads. So picking up or lifting up their heads is a very important milestone, and that usually happens by about 6 weeks of age. So when you go for your routine clinic check, and if your baby is floppy and not lifting up their heads, that should be noted by a health professional as being different. And all the way from head control, if one always starts on the top and moves down, you move towards, once you're able to lift up your head, then when are you able to roll over? So when is it dangerous for a baby to roll over and fall off the bed? And that's usually by about 2 months to 3 months of age. When can a baby turn from lying on their backs onto their tummies and vice versa? And progressing to about 6 months, when babies usually start to sit independently, and that can occur anytime between 6 and 8 months of age. Following on that, it's turning around and starting to crawl. And please remind me, I want to talk about crawling and the importance of crawling at a later stage. So crawling, and how important it is to get onto all fours and to crawl before you just go from sitting to walking. Parents seem to be very fixated on walking and very excited about the first steps. But before one gets from sitting to walking, it's very important that babies learn how to turn around, how to crawl, pull to stand, and then eventually, as they approach a year, taking those very important first steps on their own.
Okay.
So that's motor development. And then the other two categories of development are the language, which implies the higher or the cognitive development, and then the social emotional development, smiling, interacting, knowing the difference between strangers and familiar people. And with the speech, like I said, it's too late if you only decide at a year that your baby hasn't said anything.
Okay.
You need to know before that. I think what needs to be out there with prospective parents and people and the world really is that children develop from before they were born up until going into adulthood. So you cannot have a baby and not understand the importance of stimulating, nurturing, playing with, interacting, talking, singing, and creating really a very stimulating environment for your little baby to grow and thrive in. And that's because the little brain of the developing baby is firing and actively learning every minute of the day and consolidating what they see, what they hear, and how they interact with individuals right from the minute that they're born and even before that. And that's what somebody who has a baby needs to be aware of. So a baby is not someone you ignore or that you feed and put to sleep and not say anything to, or just give to an individual who's not emotionally or maternally connected to look after. That baby is going to have or maternal figure. All of that then predicts the outcome later on in terms of social development and how the child interacts later on at school, how they learn. It all starts right at the beginning.
Okay, I'm going to go back to a little bit of basics. You've mentioned speaking to the child and how important that is. But can you just elaborate in terms of interaction with the child? What would you highlight as important interactive mechanisms that you can hand across to the viewers? So you've mentioned quite a few things. If you could just give the viewers some type of examples of some of those concepts.
So a newborn baby might not be able to see perfectly, but they can see you. They do see their mothers, and they develop a connection with that maternal figure of the outline, the smell, the voice, immediately recognizing voices that they heard even in utero. And so mummies and daddies speaking to their children is crucial. Interacting, looking at babies, being animated, singing to babies, holding babies, and cuddling and showing love in many different ways is crucial. So right from the beginning, treat your baby like a little individual.
Okay. And
interact with him or her.
And in terms of play as well, if you could just maybe give the viewers some idea in different types of play that can happen with a child, so that it not only enhances him emotionally but also assists in other types of development as well.
Sure. So play is different for different people, culturally, different environments, and play does not have to be anything very sophisticated or anything expensive regarding toys or anything that you need to buy. Play means stimulation, keeping the child alert and interactive. A newborn baby, you can't play interactively with. That baby is not able to follow instructions or interact in a particular way. So that the new baby, that would be singing gently to the baby, talking to the baby, playing music or using a mobile or something, and interspersing that with quiet rest time where the baby is warmly wrapped and sleeping or feeding, etc. As the baby gets bigger and becomes more interactive, play becomes more interactive as well. So I think I've alluded to earlier on things like peekaboo, tickling of fingers and toes, body parts, singing songs, common nursery rhymes about body parts, endearing yourself to the baby so that he or she smiles, looks for you, turns their heads around, playing games where using different parts of your body, different facial expressions to you. It's very important.
And that all contributes not only emotionally, but obviously in terms of motor development, in terms of developing the grip and things
Absolutely.
like that. You've mentioned in your previous answer about the differences, or you've mentioned culture. How does culture affect the developmental aspect? So is there any variation as well?
So I think no. I think the bottom line is that babies or individuals right from development have a brain that is very similar, and learning is happening from before you're born and continuing to happen. Your cells are dividing, your brain is growing, the connections between different parts of your brain are getting fast, and they're pruning and they're getting more responsive, irrespective of your cultural background and your cultural beliefs or your religious backgrounds. And that should not make a difference. It is about the interaction. There's more evidence to show that babies from whatever cultures being exposed to negative environments, being ignored, being brought up in being surrounded by violence or trauma, or where mums are depressed, or there's any sort of criminality that they're exposed to earlier on, can adversely affect not only how they develop into personalities, but what their brains actually look like when we scan those brains, how their brains function, how they respond to stress and stuff like that. So it's not about culture or religious background, and also certainly does not mean that you ignore particular cultures or religion. Everything should be incorporated, irrespective of where a child comes from, in a loving, nurturing, stimulating environment.
So this is the foundation phase in an individual's life. Can you maybe just highlight some of the potential complications as the child goes through now primary school and further on to high school as well, if this development is not appropriate?
I think the biggest concern through studies that have happened now in the last 20 years is that lots and lots of children are not realizing their true potential. So they are not achieving, not only academically, but socially, emotionally, and becoming well-rounded individuals to the best of their potential. And if you don't realize your true potential, then you're not realizing your true potential to lead the best life you can. And in poorer countries, and in countries where children do not have access to lots of services and care, this leads to an intergenerational perpetuation or ongoing stream of children not achieving, not learning, not achieving higher earning potential, and not graduating from school, not studying further.
So it has a sort of a spin-off effect on other aspects of your life. Absolutely. As you grow older. Now, in terms of just informing the viewers, what should they do if they do suspect a child that has some delayed development?
So I think parents need to understand that each child develops differently, but within differently, there's a spectrum of what is considered normal. So a particular child might sit at 4 months, and another child might sit at 7 months, and that's still within the normal range of development. So the first thing is not to panic if your child is not doing something at a particular time, or if one child did something at 3 months and another child did it at 4 months. That makes no difference. We are individuals, we're all unique, and we're allowed to do things at different times. The question is, if you are concerned about your baby, the best thing is to try and seek help. And depending on your resources and what you have available, that would be at your local community clinic, where most mums and parents take their babies for immunizations regularly. You've got it child health card, a clinic card that you need to carry around with you until your child is in school or beyond. So during those routine visits, you can bring up your concerns about your baby not making any sounds or not babbling, and try and then understand from a healthcare professional what to do going forward, whether that needs to be referred to the local hospital, whether you need to see somebody else, whether you need to see a pediatrician, or what to do about that.
Now, in terms of the Road to Health chart, which you've mentioned, can you just highlight the importance of the Road to Health chart and one or two aspects in terms of what it covers?
Sure. So the Road to Health card or chart or booklet now is a wonderful little tool that we have available to keep documentation of your child's progress in growth, and as well as immunizations and health scares, etc. And in that booklet, parents will be able to see what the developmental milestones that we talked about earlier are, from motor to social, etc. Obviously, because it's a booklet that's small, not all the finer details that we've been talking about can be included in that booklet, but it's a lovely guide, and it's there for a reason, so that parents have an idea of when to be concerned, and to also reassure them when a baby or a child is developing normally, and if a child deviates from that those developmental milestones, to seek help at their clinic visits.
Okay, we've almost reached the end of the show, so what would be your last message to the viewers out there in terms of early childhood development?
I think use the early years that you have with your child to create as nurturing and as loving an environment as you can, and that's the essence of being a good parent, not buying things for your children or putting them in front of a big screen or buying them gadgets. It's about being present as a parent to stimulate your child.
Okay, Dr. Ramanjam, it has been a great pleasure having you in the studio. We hope to see you again. Okay, so there you have it, early childhood development. It's very important to actually lay the foundation. So as a child grows older, the foundation that you laid will play a critical role in his or her environment. So stay tuned for another episode, same time, same place, next week.